This podcast is sponsored by MD Serono and AbbVie.
Hi, I'm Victoria Reese, and this is Patient in You podcast. And I'm really excited about today's conversation because this person is very near and dear to my heart. It's my favorite person, my Uncle Timothy Reese. As I said, I'm Victoria Reese, and so we are real blood, okay? And what I love most about my Uncle Timmy is so many things, but it is the fact that I think we're so much alike, but we're niece and uncle. All the way down to liking Mountain Dew pop or like singing, just little things like that. We have always been like this. And a lot of you know, my father passed away when I was 9, and that was his brother. And I didn't really get a chance to, like, my dad and my mom, they weren't together. And so I didn't live with my dad, and I really didn't get an opportunity to spend as much time as I would have liked to with my dad's side. But when my father died, it opened up a door for me to really get to know that side of my family because that's a part of me. And my Uncle Timmy really stood up and came into my life like a storm, but a good storm, and stepped in as the father figure that I absolutely needed. And so I'd love to introduce my Uncle Timmy. Welcome to the podcast, Uncle Timmy.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for inviting me. And I'm so proud of you. And this is an honor to be ready to answer, hopefully, whatever you ask.
Yeah. So I like to ask the guests on the podcast to introduce themselves in a way. Like, how do you describe yourself? And so, who are you at your core?
Well, at my core, with those who know me like you, I'm just Timmy or Tim or Uncle Tim. But I'm the senior pastor of Amazing Grace International Ministries in Detroit, Michigan. And I consider myself just to be a regular, average Joe to an extent. I do a lot of things. I have a lot going on, but I make time, as we all know, that acronym, you make time for things that are important to you. And so Vicky is important to me. And so I'm just honored to be on here. I don't know if my introduction is enough. I'm married, been married for 37 years. I have 3 kids. My 2 oldest are 35, 34, and they're both married. My youngest one, y'all pray for him.
Pray for him,
We
y'all.
still
Now, my
believe
namesake.
Yes, we still believe in the best for Victor. He's 26. And I'm just me. I'm never a stranger anywhere I go. It only takes me a few seconds, not minutes. So I'm very comfortable in my skin, and I love being me.
I love that intro. That was perfect. I was waiting for you to say husband and father and all those things.
I thought about it after I started talking. I was like, well, the impromptu thing, I think, kind of goes with my professionalism. So I was like, well, let me at least throw that in there. So in case somebody see me and they want me, I'm already taking it. I just don't have on the ring, but
please, please. This is what I had to deal with, y'all. Girl.
Yeah, I always tell you, back then they didn't want me. Now I'm hot. They all up on me,
Okay. So I'm moving on. So one of the best things,
let's go.
I think what my Uncle Timmy taught me was a sense of self-confidence. I have a few people that taught me that, and that really are staple people with self-confidence. My mom, my Uncle Timmy, and then one of my teachers who passed away, Mrs. Perriman. And I was really taught self-confidence. And so I always felt like my Uncle Timmy always knew who he was or what's not cool, what's not good. Or he would be like, yeah, those people over there do that. We don't do that. And so I always love that about my Uncle Timmy. And I think that self-confidence got me here today just really knowing who I was. Like nobody can really influence me to do something that I don't want to do. So the podcast, Uncle Timmy, the podcast is Patient in You. And the reason why I wanted to have the podcast is because obviously, about my MS diagnosis and the work that I do. And with the work that I do, I realized from talking to other people that healthcare and being a patient of any sort was bigger than MS. And it was bigger than my diagnosis. It was something that I could have a conversation, similar to what you said. I could have a conversation with anybody about anything. And typically, because of the work that I would do, it would inspire people to talk to me about their own journey with health. And so the conversations have been getting good and good and good and better and better. And so you and I have been talking a lot about your health. And so I wanted to give you a moment to share your diagnosis and what you've been dealing with.
Let me try to do it real fast. In 2009, I was diagnosed with multiple myeloma cancer, and they, I guess, discovered it while I had discoid lupus. And in the blood work, they discovered it. And so since it didn't move, it wasn't doing anything, they called it smoldering myeloma. And so for 9 years, it just sat dormant. In 2018 is when it really started acting up. And I had to go through, chemo, a little bit of radiation, a little bit of radiation. I only had one. It only happened once. But I think from the very beginning with me, I guess it was mind over matter, because I didn't say anything for the 9 years. And then when everybody found out in 2018, when I, told my family and you all, everybody was like, oh no, because when you hear that word cancer, the big C, oh, that's the end and that kind of thing. But it was never that, and it's still not with me. But I think the successful part of the whole thing thus far is definitely by the help of God. I am who I am, and I don't think about it unless somebody talk about it. But it's been kind of a rugged ordeal. It was more rugged, I think, for everybody else than it was for me. And then me trying to act out and play the role of the patient, but at the same time, a victor, be victorious in it at the same time, because it was more for everybody else, trying to make sure everybody else was okay emotionally, mentally, and whatever. And, learning about it, because I had to learn a lot about it. And so, I don't know, it's kind of been it's been a rough road, but I'm still here, and it hasn't debilitated me, activity wise, physically. I'm still the same person, of course. I think because of all of the medicine and the things that I've gone through, it caused me to lose weight and different things like that. But, I try to, even in those moments, carry it. I think the biggest challenge was my mental, challenge, the overall mental ability to be able to adapt, adjust, make changes, but keep doing what I'm doing. So, that's kind of like, when I say the beginning, that's like the beginning part of it.
Yeah. And so am I hearing you correctly? Did you say that you learned of this in like 10 years before you told everybody else?
Yeah, it was 9 years before I told anybody anything. And I just kept going and living life. In most cases, I would forget, because it wasn't doing anything. And I was still going to see the doctor like every other month at that point. And then, when it kind of became a little more active, did a biopsy, and it's like, okay, it's moving around your numbers. And then I started learning about numbers and what it meant. To begin with, multiple myeloma is a blood disease, a blood cancer, where your red blood cells overpopulate through your bone marrow. It overpopulates, and it thinks that it's being attacked, so they fight themselves. And it depletes energy, things like that. It eat away at itself. But it's something that definitely is maintained and could be maintained. You can live a long, prosperous life. It just depends on, the person, especially the person. So, yeah.
Yeah. Why didn't you share with anyone? Was it your role in everyone's life?
I think that was the first thing. It was like the role I played. You know, when you looked at like Superman all the time, like the Renaissance man, and like the one that makes everything happen, and I knew, as I do now, I'm the glue, especially in my intermediate family, but even abroad.
Before I start, you said that I know I had asked you, like the doctors told you way before that you had, but did they say you had lupus and I was wrong?
Well, I never had lupus. It was discoid. I'm sorry, discoid lupus, which is a skin. It was in my head, in my scalp. So when I started
Yeah.
losing hair, it was in there. It wasn't systemic lupus, which attacks your organs. That's different.
So did the lupus become the cancer or is two separate
No,
things?
they're two separate things. So the
Okay.
discoid lupus is gone,
Got it.
but that's how they found it when they was doing the blood work. And so,
Got it.
like,
Okay.
yay, okay, it's something else, I guess. That's kind of how it's been. There's not one thing, it's something else.
So you mentioned that you didn't share with people and so you didn't even tell your wife?
Nope. I didn't know if I thought it would go away. I really don't know what I thought. I just didn't feel like it was necessary for me to tell anybody. Um, you know, I guess me knowing my family and how they are, and I think you as well included, uh, everybody would start trying to police me. And, I just didn't want that. I didn't want to live in an open prison like I am now, so to speak. You know, everybody wanted to
Yeah.
become Google doctors and tell me what to eat, what to drink. Don't go here. We'll do this and we'll do that. When I'm the one who, you know, I move about and kind of shake and move as I want. Not being selfish, but I just didn't feel like it was necessary to say anything. So I didn't.
Yeah. And so now
So,
that you're in this space, what we've talked about a lot was managing those around us. And so that was a great segue. Now that people know what you're dealing with and they want to try to police you, how have relationships changed since, especially, considering sometimes there's highs and sometimes there's lows? How has that changed your relationships?
of course, they become very clingy, you know, um, a mass amount of calls checking on me and, within hours, so to speak. It's kind of tapered off a little bit, but it's still kind of the same in a sense. Um, so we've always been close knit. So for them to just show up and come over to my house, that's nothing. That's nothing new. That's kind of the same.
Mhm.
But the internal questions like, how are you feeling? Feel the same way I did when you asked me an hour ago, so to speak. Or, my biggest thing was physically, if I'm not feeling good, it kind of shows. But most of my feelings were
Mhm.
mental, emotional, and I didn't say anything about
Yeah.
that for a while, a couple of years or so, because, it's like I didn't want to have those talks because I was still trying to make adjustments on my own. So it made my relationship with my, wife and kids, of course, much closer. They police me. And I say it jokingly and sparingly a little bit, but I'm serious. You all have become the police, the detectives, asking each other, summing up, before I can tell you how I feel, tell me what to eat, where to go. And, there was a lot of good that came out of it. For example, I never stayed in the hospital by myself. I never ate any hospital food, and I didn't have to ask them, you guys just did it, waited on me hand and foot, like you in Atlanta, but you were still like up to date with what was going on, keeping, current issues current, uh, knowing, if they gave me medicine, a lot of times, I became so inquisitive about what you're giving me. Is this experimental? Is this specific? Or, things like that. And then I would include them in on that so that, maybe I would miss something that I should have heard. So I would bring, so it kind of really brought everybody a little more closer to home. And then even like with the church, um, you know, I'm so used to making things happen, because that's kind of just who I am and goes along with my character. My church became the same way. And, like if somebody thought I wanted something, they were doing it. But relationship wise, it brought, even like my dad, and, he calls me on a regular basis. Sometimes I think too much because he's in his 90s and we could have just talked about something and nothing has changed. He'll ask me about it, so I have to talk about it again. So it's been really good. I would say it's been good overall. Overall.
Yeah. And so something I talk about with people who are fellow patients or dealing with something that scares people and their loved ones, I ask, like, have you dealt with people like projecting on you? Sometimes like there's the one family member who's like really strong, doesn't like very stoic when something's going wrong or something's scary, they're still the calm through the storm. And then you have others who are like nervous and they're scared for you. And then it's like sometimes like it's too much. You kind of putting it on me.
Yeah.
How do you manage that? Because I'm sure as a pastor of a church, you deal with a lot of people who mean well, but a lot of people are so uncomfortable with health conditions or health concerns that they end up projecting on you. So how is it managing that as a pastor of a church?
I guess I'll back into it. The members, which is my spiritual family, I have very few of them that are like the calm in the storm. They're all nervous and just out of wits. So there's a scripture in Zechariah in the Bible. It says, if you smote the shepherd, the sheep will scatter. Meaning if you get rid of the shepherd, the leader, then the sheep will scatter. I'm very concerned about that. So that projection of what that means, because it is a reality and I've seen it happen and I didn't want it to happen to me. I would come to church sometimes sick, not feeling well, just so they could see me. And if they saw me, it would cause their level of anxiety to go down. At home, with the individual ones, I thought if something were to happen to me, you would, have to put Angie in a straitjacket. But she seems to be the one who is like the most calm. She could digest information and then respond. Uh, Unfortunately,
Mm-hmm.
the one that everybody probably thought would be that one was Gina, my wife, who is to me totally the opposite. She's like the worst. It's always the worst case scenario. Um, I remember telling her, hey, look, I think we need to have a conversation about if something were really to happen and I meet my demise, then let's make sure this, and this, and this. Why did I do that? It was like a whole 3 or 4 days. She was just the wealth of melancholy. She walked around, eyes red all the time, crying in secret, and the whole thing until I guess she just kind of overcame it. And I told her, I don't
Mm-hmm.
plan on leaving. I want to stay as long as possible, but I have personally no control over this, but I trust God. However,
Yeah.
she's kind of that one that she can become unglued and you got to rewire her. Timmy and Victor,
Mm-hmm.
Timmy is probably next. He surprised me. I thought he would be the one. Hey, if something happened, all right, get Timmy. He knows what to do. He knows how to run a church. He's the one I think is going to need some Ritalin or something, to kind of really, slow his steps down. And of course, Victor, he's who he is. He says very little. He has less to say, but he's definitely concerned about his dad. But yeah, that projection, I just learned how to deal with it, which with each one of them. And so with Gina, I'm kind of
Mm-hmm.
like face on, like here it is right here, so you can get the shock out of your system. And she's definitely have become the Google doctor, and she's like the cardiologist. She's the urologist. She is the oncologist. And I just have to live with it. Like, okay, more than these people who have dedicated their lives to this, and so I just let it go. But it has been a challenge,
Yeah.
and you get to know people and their anxieties, their indiscrepancies, their doubt. You get to learn that about them, and so
Yeah.
it's been an eye opener. It really has. It's been an eye
Yeah.
opener.
Yeah.
That has. So
And so that's been some of the interesting conversations, you and I have been having
yeah,
of that this is a new era for everybody in different ways. And it's
yeah,
very interesting how we um have to manage the projections because, people don't mean harm, but how we have to manage it because you're still going through the thick of it
yeah,
while managing others. And I thought that was really interesting what you said about just showing up at church just to kind of calm everybody down. And that just shows, like just who you are and your character, but also your role.
yeah.
That's a big role that you have as a pastor of a church. People look to you for guidance. And so I
Exactly.
can understand them being shaken by the person who they are getting counsel from
Interesting.
is,
Very interesting.
down
Yeah.
bad.
I would still get people that would call
Mhm.
me and tell me of their issues, counseling people on the phone, when I felt like it. But the one thing I think overall that is new for me, and I'm learning it, I call it leading while I'm bleeding. It's a
Yeah.
task. It's very difficult. And a lot of my predecessors, some of the other pastors that I know, I don't call all of them friends because I don't have a lot of friends, as you know, but it's unique. None of them have really had to lead while they bleed. And when I say that to them, they're like, "Oh man, that'll preach." And that's profound. Yeah, it sounds good, but how about living through it? How about that part? And it's been a
Yeah.
task, but it's making me a stronger person. Um, it's making me value a lot of things that I probably didn't value at first. One of the things is the importance of leadership. Like, you cannot lead from behind. I don't care what the situation is. You have to be the face and the voice if you're going to lead, no matter what the situation is. And so you have to learn how to undermine any and everything and everybody to still lead. That, like I said, I would like almost be feeling like I got to throw up and still in church clapping my hands just so people can see me and they would feel better. Oh, I feel so much better. You look good. And and I look like, when I look in the mirror, I look like somebody put me in a dark room and 10, 15 guys just beat me up and let me out. That's how I feel a lot of times. But,
Yeah.
that commercial says never let them see you sweat. I think I've learned how to do it. You know,
Do
but
you think that that is the right thing to do? The lead while bleed. Is that the right thing to do?
with some wisdom, because sometimes, as you know, um, sometimes it was difficult, very difficult, even to talk on the phone. So if I didn't feel like talking on the phone, I just didn't
Hmm.
answer it. Or
Yeah.
if I had the phone, because I was being policed. And sometimes I didn't need the phone because I would still answer it when I didn't need to. But yeah,
Yeah.
it was, and it is, and it will be the right thing to do with wisdom. I mean, you just have to be wise, because there are times where I wasn't wise. I would still get up and try to speak. And I had an incident in the pulpit that I thought was quite embarrassing. I passed out. I didn't fall to the floor. I was sitting down, but I was gasping for air. And when I realized anything, Timmy was standing beside me and, hugging me around my shoulder saying, "Dad, I got it. I got it." And here's this sanctuary full of people just looking at me, some of them in awe. Some of them didn't know what was going on, as usual. But you get, those ones. And, I'm practical. If I was standing there and
Yeah.
somebody passed out, I'm like, "Call 911." They was like, "We're going to plead the blood and we're going to pray." No, call 911. Call 911. They right up the street. They'll be here in a minute. Don't you be trying to give them CPR. You're not certified. I don't want no lawsuits. So I'm
Right.
very practical. So yes, with
Yes.
wisdom, I would do it all over again. Yeah, with some wisdom.
Okay. So, when we would talk in times when you weren't feeling good, and I noticed myself starting to grieve, but grieve not like you gone.
Yeah.
But I noticed myself having random breakdowns of feeling like, oh my God, I don't even want to think of the day. I'm like getting emotional now.
Yeah.
Like I'm not prepared for anything like that, even if it's in 20 years. And it
Jamal told
honestly inspired me. Oh, he did. And
he
so,
said, somebody gonna have
I
to do
think that
something. Something happened to you. She's not gonna be able to. I don't know what we're gonna do because we got to do something. I said, well, I think the biggest thing you do is immediately bring her around family. There's strength in that. So everybody cry together. Everybody do whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm good. Either way, I'm good. I win. I'm in a win-win situation. I got y'all here now, and this is like the best of my 50s, having my nieces and nephews. I mean, really, like, it has caused brothers at my church. Men can be pride-stricken. Like, they don't want to be seen crying. They don't want to be seen, I've literally seen, because of my bedridden conditions at times, brothers get on their knees and pray. I've seen my sons. Well, it's not unusual for Timmy, but it is unusual for Victor to take my hand and loudly and verbally pray for his dad. That's unusual for him. That's not who he is. But that love for somebody will make you do things that you wouldn't normally do because you want them around. And so to me, that's special. That's uniquely special. Jamal called me. It's like, hey man, how you doing? I'm doing good, man. He said, no, really, how you doing? I said, and I kind of went into it a little bit. He was like, hey, I just want to tell you, man, like, you know your niece, but she ain't taking this well. And so I don't know what to do if something were to happen. I said, immediately bring her around family. I said, but I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. I mean, I just feel like, and I'm not being over sensationally theological and spiritual. I just really do feel like I have so much more work to do yet that it's not time. But this is a season of what I'm supposed to go through. Number one, for God to get the glory, but even along with that, because that's very important, that I don't embarrass him and, allow my faith to falter because of the doctors, because he put doctors here really for us. And so, I get that. But I think it has a lot to do with, like I said at the beginning, this really doesn't have anything to do with me, but it has everything to do with those who are around me, so they can really see who he is and how he can work in somebody's life. Heck, I feel like I probably could walk out in the middle of Grand River and get hit by a bus, and meet my demise before something like this, will take me out. That's just the way I feel. I don't think about it like that.
Yeah.
So, stop crying.
Yeah. And so with the podcast, we've I know we've been talking to people outside of the person, who's been diagnosed. We've been talking to daughters of someone who lives with something, mothers of something, and that is what is interesting about health and journeys of health and diagnoses. It's not just the person who's dealing with something. Everyone around us ultimately is affected. And we go on a journey in a different way, but we go on a journey. Sometimes people go through stuff and families fall apart. Sometimes an elder parent is sick and the kids are fighting on who's the one who's going to step up and take care of the parent and stuff like that. It just, it is bigger than just that one person, that gets the diagnosis. And so how it affects everybody around us is something special to talk about, but I think it's not spoken about enough. And so it's like why I wanted to have a podcast to talk about the different nuances of it.
That's interesting. I never thought about it that way. Like, they receive a diagnosis, and depending on how close you are to the person, it's almost as if that's a diagnosis for them as well. And, it is
Absolutely.
something, yeah, for somebody else outside of the actual individual. I guess I never thought of it that way because I was always thinking who I was to everybody. And so let me still try to be, everything to everybody and not really consider how they really felt about the person who was trying to be everything to everybody. I guess it is a diagnosis for other people in a sense. I guess it is. Now that I think about
Yeah, it's the name of the podcast is The Patient in You. It's like you could be
it.
adjacent to the patient and now you're trying to learn about the illness. And then,
Yeah.
God forbid the person is not able to advocate for themselves in the doctor's office. And so you have to now speak up for them
Yeah.
and support them in what they want and their wishes. And even kind of what you mentioned, having somebody come to an appointment with you just to make sure you heard it right. So now you have
Yeah.
to hear it right. It's just a different, it really does. It involves other people. And I wanted to talk about
Yeah.
that because I think it had the people in your life, like your kids or your wife, if they weren't supportive or if they weren't coming to you or they had you eating hospital food, God forbid.
Oh God,
But
no.
like if they weren't there for you, your experience would be so much different. And so it's important
Yeah.
to include others in this conversation, not only for more awareness, more empathy, but also for preparation.
Yeah.
Anybody can get a diagnosis, and everything isn't like, we're not always talking about something terminal. We could be talking about autism. Your child gets autism, diagnosed with autism. Now that changes the family dynamic
Yeah.
because that child needs additional support. And so
Well, that changes
that's kind of
everything.
why I wanted to have these conversations. I could
Yeah.
talk about it all the time. And so that leads me to asking you,
Yeah.
what worries you the most right now?
What worries me the most right now, I think the thing that worries me the most is, am I going to be ready and strong enough to play golf when golf season starts? I know that might sound like real
No.
juvenile to somebody. But I guess, doing what I used to do, like this winter, I was just basically shut down, you know. So in the wintertime, people didn't get to see me as much outside of my church family and my house, home. I think the thing that, because I've been dealing, like I've told you as of late, with the emotional side, the intellectual side of things, like, will I be able to do what I've been able to do before as and be just as effective? Like, for example, I haven't preached like for probably 3-4 months now. I taught Bible class twice in the last 3 or 4 months. Um, will I be able to, and that part, the exhortation part for me is a gift. So I believe, just warming that gift up and going back at it. But will I have the same energy? Will I have to really cultivate how I did it before? Will I become more of a speaker, orator versus an emotional, the foolishness of preaching, kind of tuning up and, rocking the crowd kind of thing? Well, things like that. Being, like that, those kind of things. Will I be able to do those things, like I did before? Or now do I, try to elevate? I don't say digress, but elevate to another level, something new that's more profound, something that I didn't do before. So I try to fill in the gaps. Like, so since I haven't been able to be in the pulpit preaching, so I'll play the organ or the piano. I have many gifts and talents, things that I do still. And, when I have, and as of late, I sing a lot more when I get up and have remarks. And so just trying to be my old self in a new way is the challenge for me now. That's
Mm-hmm.
what if I can kind of shorten the words up, trying to be the old me in a new way, whatever that means. And just being
Yeah.
comfortable with it. It's a challenge. So, when I was 25, a 5-foot fence, I can grab the top post and hop over it. At 58, not so much. It's like I'm gonna walk around to the gate now, and I'm gonna walk out of it. So, I take my time doing things versus the shortcut, because that's just kind of the way
Mm-hmm.
life is for me now. And and I'm I guess okay with the pace to an extent, but futuristically, will that pace be enough for me? When my mind says do it this way or go at it like this, but my physical body is saying no, don't try that. You can't do that anymore, and just settle with that, and then make new
Yeah.
arrangements to do things and to think. My mental thing has been the biggest thing for me. It's that has been the challenge for me, and it still is to an extent. So
Yeah. So it sounds like there's a little, and not just with you and what you're dealing with health wise, but maybe any human as we age or things change, circumstance change, kind of grieving what was and having to readjust to what is. And that the mental part of that aspect it's a journey.
yeah, and it's not so much the age, although that might be the realistic part of it. It was like I had to deal with the ailment because that made
Hmm.
changes. Those were abrupt changes for me. Like I
Hmm.
didn't know what I didn't know what it meant or how it felt to be 50 or to be 58. You know what I mean? So if I were able to just be healthy, whatever somebody would consider to be healthy with no ailments, and then just kind of move into 58, I guess that would be a different train of think cycle for me. But mine has been more
Yeah.
impulsive because of what changed. Like, to me, for a male to have morning sickness, that's kind of not normal, but it's normal to hear of a female having morning sicknesses. That's normal. But for me to have morning sickness before I can like digest food or eat, I would have to go through a sick spell. Like right now, I have to go through a little spell, um, before I can feel like I can eat something and keep it down. So making those kind of adjustments, like
Hmm.
how long is this gonna last? And I'm not on any chemo, I'm not on any radiation, I'm not on any of that. Is this the after effects of what that stuff did to me? In the first couple, 2 or 3 years. Um, then when I asked the doctor, it's as if they don't know about that, but they can tell me about why my toes tingle. The neuropathy part, and you know, me, I'm not taking medicine for everything. I just rock my way through it, but that's kind of the way it is. Like trying to deal with these impulsive things, like these things that I get no warning about.
Yeah.
So that's
Hmm.
that's been kind of challenging for me. But I mean, I handle it. I try at least.
Hmm. Do you feel like you're doing everything you can to live well?
No. Um, so like, I've always been super duper active. Now, if you tell me,
Hmm.
well, my cardiologist was like, you need to walk at least 30 minutes a day. I'm like, I move around enough. And she's like, no, it needs to be targeted. I find myself finding that to be a task. But before, I
Yeah.
had a membership at Lifetime. We were at the gym every other day, if not every day. It was a no-brainer. But things just have changed. So now it's like, so no, the answer to that question is no. Now, when it comes to my diet, I have a very boring diet, in my opinion, anyways. Like, I've never been a salt guy, so I don't need to spruce my food up. If you make it, then I don't care. It can be bland, um, and I'll just eat it because I know what it's supposed to do. But I don't need to spruce it up a lot. But you know, I was on some medication, on some steroids, and it caused my glucose to go out of control. So I had to take insulin,
Hmm.
and now I'm this diabetic because of, the glucose.
Oh, wow.
So now I get, backtracking a little bit, the impulsiveness of my family that, I got to watch my sugar and I can't have this because it got sugar in it. So when have you known me to be a dessert person? I've never like fiend for desserts. Like you're not going to see me eating ice cream and cakes and that. I don't need those. I feel like I'm already sweet, so I don't need all that. I mean, I just don't. I'm not a sugar eater. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
so now it's like I got this infection in my heart because of all of this stuff that I've been through. My immune system is like on zero. Um, you know, Now everybody wants to, you got to be careful about the salt. Well, when have you seen me be a salt fanatic? If it's not already in it, then,
Right.
let's watch that. Let's not watch my hand with a salt shaker because you're not going to see it. So I do the best
Right.
I
Right.
can with all of these flip sides, but ultimately, I think I could do better uh, with certain things. But for the most part, I guess I'm okay. But to be truthful, my answer to that question is no.
Well, we got to change that answer. I realized that I didn't define
Yeah,
multiple myeloma. It is a type of blood cancer that affects plasma cells, which are white blood cells that produce antibodies. It's most common in people over 65 and is more common in African Americans. I didn't know that last part, that it was more common in African Americans.
that's interesting. I said red blood cells, but I meant white blood cells early when I was explaining it.
Hmm.
Now that you say it. But what's interesting is now, like, so when I go to the doctor's office, I see all
Hmm.
kind of people, like all ethnicities. And it's,
Mm.
I don't see, I mean, I see more Hispanics, Indians, Caucasian. Those numbers to me are greater from what I see. I don't see as many Afro Americans in there like that. But if statistics says it could have been, maybe just in my community, that's what I'm seeing, maybe because where I live at or where I go to the doctor. But um, I've heard those statistics. I'm a little disappointed because part of my think cycle, and I keep, relegating this. I don't have that why me syndrome, but in a kind of sort of way
Hmm.
I do. I'm not mad at God
Yeah.
about it. I was mad at him for about 2 weeks when I first heard the diagnosis, but I got over it kind of quick because life can happen to anybody. But as far as
Yeah.
its diagnosis and the prevalency of the statistics that you learn about or you hear about, I don't see it that way. Like I said, probably because of the demographic of where I am and where I live. But I mean, this thing is affecting all people, not just you know a conglomerate number of Afro Americans. I mean, I see it young and old. I saw, when I see teenagers,
Yeah.
my heart goes out to them. Like, dang, you don't have to deal with this craziness. And some of them coming in there brand new. You can tell when they're brand new. They have no idea of what they're
Mm.
about to embark on or what they have zero idea. And I think, I don't know, I thought about maybe doing a blog telling the newbies like, hey, get prepared. This is what may or may not happen. And I found myself praying for people in there quietly, like, man, you have no idea what you're about to go through, you know. So
You told me
it's
that before, that you do that when
yeah.
you're in the waiting room, you see people that you could tell
Oh
they're
man,
new to
yeah.
it and things like that. Hmm.
Yeah.
What I know about you is faith. Like that's what when I think about you, I think about faith. For someone dealing with a diagnosis of any kind, what would you say to them about faith throughout their journey of a diagnosis, that an unfavorable diagnosis?
When it comes to, you know, things like faith, self-awareness, like you being comfortable in your skin, to bring it down to more of a layman kind of term, I think the individual really needs to be comfortable with themselves. I think a lot of the anxieties and the reason why people are uncomfortable, from those that I've talked to and what I've gathered, even just in life, is when they felt like either they haven't done enough or it's some unfinished business in their lives, and they feel like now this may catapult them to an early end where they can't redo some wrongs or things like that. But I think the biggest thing is I would really recommend for people when it comes to this faith journey is when it comes to things that happen in your life and you can't control, ask God for forgiveness immediately. Like, he can justify you for wrongs that you will never be able to go back and right. You'll never be able to do it. He is the only one that can right wrongs for us that we can never go back and redo. Because we only get one life. We have one go around at this. And so to have an advocate that can go back in your past and erase things out of your life so that you won't be held accountable for them, that will boost your faith. If you don't believe in God, this is a good time to start considering a higher power. Somebody has some control over what we don't. This is a good time to consider, with our atheistic or our carnal thoughts or whatever, our disbelief or our lack of faith or not practicing a life that's pleasing to God. This is a good time to start considering it. And I know everybody probably would say, oh yeah, you'll do it now because you have a terminal illness. Well, I think that's the best time to do it, regardless to what the gainsayers say. But when it comes to faith, know this, the Bible says that in Romans, that he gives every man a measure of faith. So all of us have a measure of faith. Faith is like a heart or like your muscles. You have to exercise it in order for it to grow. And when you're exercising faith, like you do when you're exercising, you have to change your diet. You also have to change your diet when it comes to how you believe what you believe. You have to change your diet. You have to exercise. So now you have to start utilizing trust. And if you don't trust anybody, you better learn how to start trusting him. And so you have to really, so in the natural, so in the spirit, you have to really start exercising your faith, even at the moment of your knowledge of something is wrong with me or whatever. You have to start exercising your faith, and you have to learn how to become comfortable in your own skin. I look at you, and we rarely talk about MS, me and you. We do. You educate me on it. But when I look at you, I don't look at you like an MS patient. I look at you more like an MS advocate, meaning how better can someone explain to you and be a witness of something except they really are a victim of it in a good way. I can't tell you what it means to be broke or don't have any money unless I've been poor and been broke, and I have been. When I was in college, I used to stay in my car. I remember, so and then when God blessed me to have a couple of dollars, okay, I know what it means to not have it. I know what it means not to eat the best of food. I know what it means to live from pillar to post. I know what those things mean. So what better person can tell you about what the process of those things are like unless they did it or they lived it. So when it comes to faith, yeah, I can tell you about faith when, I felt like I had none and I just became quiet.
Yeah.
And I became, because quiet is powerful because nobody knows what you're thinking. And just exercising that faith, you got to have it. It's something you really need to develop, and you get it at all costs and don't sell it because you're going to need it in this life at some point, whether it's because of an illness, divorce, and then just to wrap this thing up, that part of it. I counsel people all the time about relationship. I've been married 37 years, and I've counseled people that got a divorce, and I'm like, okay, the Bible says God hate divorce, and okay, I don't like it either, but maybe they need to be apart. But a friend of mine just came to me and told me after 18 years, he and his wife is getting a divorce, and it hurt me to my heart. And I feel like, his issue has become mine. And so what I've been preaching to him about is faith and hope. Like, even if y'all do go through this, you still have to have faith and hope, because your two younger kids have to have a full force parent that can help them keep hope alive and make some adjustments and keep moving in life. So faith is important in all kind of ways and all kind of dynamics in life. And you just have to learn how to roll with those punches, but still maintain a level of faith that keep your head above the water, if nothing else. So you have to have faith. You have to have faith. Is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. You have to act and live as if it's already happening. You've already succeeded. You're already healed. You have to train your mind and everything about you to think and act like that. And so that's what has been keeping me. That's, like mind over matter. I don't talk about it, not because it depresses me. I don't think about it like that. But I'm open to talk about it if you want to talk about it. So that's kind of where it is.
I love that. All right, Uncle Timmy, where can folks find you or learn more about the church that you have created?
So what's interesting is, I'm going to do my best with this one. So we have a Twitter account. We have, and a lot of my preacher friends, they so camera savvy. They'll get on there and they'll just rip it off to you and tell you. AGI live stream, if you just Google that, it'll put you on to us. We're in Detroit, Michigan. We have a Twitter account. We're going to put these things, on there afterwards so people can find us. I think the Instagram is AGI, all caps, _ Amazing Grace. So you'll see things on there like that. We have a Facebook page. It's Amazing Grace International Ministries. So definitely you'll see my face on there, my wife's face, and in the church here, 24699 Grand River, Detroit, Michigan. Grand River Avenue, Detroit, Michigan, 48219. And, so we're very easy to find. And I even said, I'm going to do better. I'm going to tell my staff in the next month, I want a web page. We had one and it fell off. And that's when I was trying to be like everything. I was managing everything. But then after, some time, God sent me some help. And I never delegated that, the media source to anybody. So, we're going to have a web page coming up shortly.
Okay. All right. Well, do you have time to stick around for a question that someone wrote in with?
Oh, sure.
Too often are we quiet about some of our health diagnoses, our health issues, or some of our frustrations about health. And so this segment is called Let's Talk About It, because that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about it. So Tribble, do you have a question for us?
What do you pray for when it comes to your health? And what part does faith play in your wellness journey?
Okay. He kind of answered about faith. So we can tag team this with Uncle Timmy.
I mostly pray that God will cover me with my own discrepancies, with, how I think, like how I might protrude how I think, like how I show it. I don't want to be a hypocrite or anything false as it relate to how I'm feeling or what I'm going through. I want to be as realistic as possible, but I still want to show some measure of strength. So where I'm weak, he's strong. So I pray that he, fill up those gaps for me. That's the one thing. Do I pray that he just exonerate this thing and heal me? It's interesting because somebody asked me that, and I don't pray that as much maybe as people think, or maybe someone else might, because what I really believe is when I signed up for Christendom, I signed up to be an example, and I mean to the 10th power. So if it means I have to live through this until God says it's done, whenever he says it's done, I'm doing it because I'm an example for him to show people who he is even in the midst of a crisis. So that's probably why I don't pray for total healing, but I pray that, God, you help me to sustain a measure of strength and a measure of mental capacity so I don't lose my mind in it. And whatever you need me to do and whoever you need me to be in this, that's what I pray for most than anything.
Mm,
It's weird, but
that was good.
yeah, I don't pray for healing
That was
like
good.
that. But
Yeah. I think that in the beginning, I think I prayed for healing because I got my diagnosis because I was dealing with the flare up. I was physically feeling the diagnosis. But now, and I think for a lot of years, I prayed for God to use me
yeah,
as a
yeah,
testimony because I think before MS, I think that I had l- I think that I felt that my life was a
hmm
testimony prior to MS. And when I got diagnosed, I think early on I realized, and thank God I realized that it was an avenue for me to, you know, share my testimony, but also to use what seems like not a blessing
mm
to turn it into a blessing.
yes,
And so it's like, this is so bad. This is so devastating. And my attitude was always like, not for me.
exactly.
Like I really was not worried about the outcome.
Yeah,
And when I started realizing that I wasn't super scared and terrified of the outcome, I
hmm
realized that that was something different. And I'm like,
yeah,
why am I not that scared? Why am I not that scared? But it was
yeah,
because I was cool with God using me
yeah,
to do whatever I needed to do. And early on, it was like, I gotta represent. I gotta bring awareness. I gotta talk about what I'm going through because I felt so alone. And
yeah,
so I would, for the listener who, asked the question, I know they didn't ask for recommendations on what to pray for, but I hope you take what we pray for
yeah.
and use it. I definitely ask God to work it out.
That's interesting. So that just goes to show you how much of alike we are. Because I didn't really pray for healing, and kind of in a way I still don't. Um, I just don't. I think like, hey, this is what I signed up for, and I kind of went into it
Mhm.
like that. Like I was a little,
Yeah.
you know, stricken with the news. But then, like I said, I was mad at God for about 2 weeks. But after he reassured me, he's like, hey, this don't have anything to do with you. I got you. I'm going to take care of you. You're going to go through some things, but it's not going to be unto death. And so use this as a
Mm,
platform to tell people like, hey, listen, you can go through anything as long as you have him, as your spinal cord, so to speak. And so like you, I don't think of it like that. It might be weird. I mean, look at you. I don't remember. Were you diagnosed before you got married? You were. Yeah,
what?
you were. No,
I've been married for 6 months, Uncle
yeah, but
Timmy. You
that's why I
married
said I
me.
had to. But you and Jamal been together like forever. So to me, y'all were kind of,
You mean before I got with Jamal?
yeah. So me.
Oh,
No, don't ask me about this married thing because I'm more of a jump the broom person.
okay. I know.
Yeah, I'm more of a jump the broom person. All
We
right.
know.
So, I mean, look at you. You're married. You have a child. You're living a full fledged life. You know what I mean? You go on trips out of the country. It's like you let nothing hold you back. And so I look at it like a testimony. Like, I'm walking around with this terminal thing, but it's not going to hold me back from doing what I want to do, and especially what I need to do. Like what you're doing is what you need to do. You need to do this. It's fulfilling. So,
Mm-hmm.
like in likeness and
Mm-hmm.
kind, what I do is when I get up and I'm talking to even other churches where I preach at, hey, I don't look like what I've been through. I'm a miracle. Look at me. This is the God in me.
Amen.
And look, I don't care what you're going through. And people are going through less, and they're not even having the mental capacity to deal with the less that they're going through. But hey, look, I mean, I'm nobody, but look at what he's doing in my life. So, and in
Mm-hmm.
yours. It's a beautiful
I,
testimony.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. It is, and it's interesting. It's interesting, and I'll stop here. But in our community and some of the work that we do, um, because we're focused on Black people, with health conditions, and we are educating the greater like pharmaceutical industry or healthcare industry on how Black people cope with things. And one of those things is through prayer, through faith, through, having faith and seeking that spiritual connection, and leaning on it. And it has to be incorporated in the work that I do. It's like not the forefront. I'm not a pastor, but in our community, we are always like, do your thing, say your prayer, thank your God, because that's what we do. And we've gotten flack for it. When people will say, well, this isn't about God. This is a patient advocacy group. We're here to talk about MS and be a resource. And everybody doesn't have the same religion. That's cool. In this space, you can talk about that. Whoever your God is, whatever you want to do, we pray over here, and we bring that in the space. We bring that in this space. It's welcome where Black folk reside. And so I love that we were able to talk about that intersectionality in this conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, don't get me started on, Afro-American history, Black people history. We have been resilient
I know.
in all kind of things. So what should make this any different? To me, there's no difference.
Yep.
We're resilient people.
Yep.
And we're still beautiful at the same time.
We are.
If you have questions related to your health, patienthood, navigating the healthcare system, advocating as a caregiver, finding community in your wellness journey, or anything related to being Black and ill, record it in a voice note or write it in a letter and send it to me at podcast@weareillms.com.
And that concludes this episode. Uncle Timmy, it was great having you. Thank you for joining. I love you so much.
This is so good. I get to spend time. This is monumental for me. Me and my Vicky get to, do something in her professional status. This is awesome. This is great. It is. I'm going to tell everybody. Y'all know I did a podcast with Vicky. You're on that level. Y'all got to get up on that level.
If you'd enjoyed this episode, please leave us a 5-star rating wherever you listen. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, leave us a review. If you like this episode and you loved my Uncle Timmy as much as I love my Uncle Timmy, share this episode with a friend. You can find We Are Ill at We Are Illmatic on Instagram, and you can find me on Instagram at @PictureThisBig. And until next time, I'm Victoria Reese, and this is Patient in You. Patient in You is a podcast from We Are Ill. It is hosted by me, Victoria Reese. Our producer is Tribble at Ask Tribble Inc. Original music by Laura Burke. Video content produced by Joshua Duane and Matt Ellis. Don't forget to find us on Instagram at Patient in You, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at We Are Ill MS for the full video version of each episode. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend and leave us a 5-star rating wherever you listen to podcasts. It helps people find us. For more information about We Are Ill, our programs, and our initiatives, visit our website, weareillms.com.
The Patient in You podcast is for informational purposes only and not medical advice. We Are Ill is not a medical organization. Always consult your physician before making health decisions.
This podcast is sponsored by MD Serono and AbbVie.